Hey everybody, Hatcher here with gaming news, reviews, and tips, GNRT, and we're back in the cockpit of the FA-18 here in DCS world with a training module on carrier landings. Now I've gone ahead and designed a bit of a map that you can use to practice your carrier landings, and the reason for that is while the training is very good, it makes it hard to get in a lot of practice because you're going through the tutorial every time. And to be honest with you, I find those gates a little bit hard in order to navigate if you're just trying to get some practice and get yourself down on the carrier. So what I've got here is a continuation of training mission 1. So there is a little bit of a story. Essentially, you're being transferred out to the Stennis to go into active combat operations. And since you're being transferred to the Stennis, you've got to fly from one airfield out to the Stennis and land out there on the Stennis and do your carrier landing. There's 3 different aircraft so that you can go ahead and practice how you see fit. If you want the most realistic version, you can start in the Cold and Dark Hornet and then fly out to the Stennis. That's actually going to take you quite a bit longer because you're going to have a longer flight time and you're going to have the startup time, but it'll give you the most realistic version of the story. There's also an aircraft that's hot and ready in Kutaisi, and then finally we've got one airborne as well. And the airborne one is the one I would recommend using if you just want to get some repetitive practice on your carrier landing. So let's go ahead and hop in, and I can run through a carrier landing with you. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to need to do if we're going to navigate out to the Stennis is we need to set our TACAN. So I'm going to bring the HSI up on my right DDI. Now normally I would have that on the MPC display down here in the center, but it makes it a little bit easier coming in for a carrier landing if it's on the right hand side, and doing a bit of a video like this, it makes sure that it's going to be in the shot. So let's go ahead and set up our TACAN. Again, turn the TACAN on here at the UFC. So press the TACAN button and then on. And then we're going to enter the carrier TACAN station, which I've got set to 74. And then we press enter. Now, we can see that the aircraft carrier has shown up here as an airfield sort of landing area out in the water. So it's on our map, but we want some navigation assistance. We want to know how far away it is. And we want to know
altitude.
And we want to know what heading we need to take to get there. So we're going to box TACAN. And so now we can see that the Stennis is 33.3 nautical miles away from us. And we also have a heading, which would be about 217 degrees to fly right to the Stennis. Now we're going to be using our radio in order to communicate with the Stennis, tell them that we're going to come in for a landing. And again, just like landing in an airfield, they are going to give us some very important information. So let's go ahead and call into the Stennis and let them know that we're inbound.
Marshall 010, marking Moms 045, 429, Angels 5, State 12.7.
Okay, I'm just going to pause the game here for a quick second and explain a little bit about what we're seeing here on the screen. So we've radioed in and we're talking to the air marshal, and that's one of the air traffic controllers on the Stennis or on your aircraft carrier that you're going to land on. 010, that's identifying us, that's us. Marking Mom 045 for 29. So we're actually telling the aircraft carrier where we are in relation to them. So we're 45 degrees away from them, 29 nautical miles away. And then Angels is our altitude, so 5,000 feet. And then our state is our fuel state, how much fuel we're carrying, so 12.7.
Mother's weather is visibility 10 plus mile. Clear. Altimeter is 29093. Case 1 recovery expected BRC 327. Report see me at 10.
Okay, so now the aircraft carrier is reported back and they've called out to us, 010, telling us a little bit about what the weather is and also what kind of recovery that we're going to have. In this case, it's a case 1 recovery. So we've got great visibility of 10 plus miles. It's clear. They've also told us what the altimeter reading is, 29.93. So we could set our barometric pressure and then our barometric altitude would be bang on. We're going to use our radar altitude to come in for a landing, but it's always a good habit to set that barometric altimeter to, where you're landing at. Probably the most important thing that they're telling us here is the BRC of 327. So that's the heading that the aircraft carrier is on. So we can set a course line for 327 degrees, and then we know where the aircraft carrier is heading, and we can use that to come in for a landing, similar like we would do at an airfield. And then finally, air traffic control is asking us to report to them when we're 10 nautical miles out. So let's go ahead and continue on. Now, just a few housekeeping things in preparation for landing. I'm going to start to descend a little bit. We want to get down to about that 2,500 feet mark so that we can come in nicely to the aircraft carrier. So we're going to start to descend. There's a few other things that we can do. We can also set our altimeter so that it's going to give us a reading when we're, about 40 feet off the water surface.
Altitude.
So we'll just do that here by backing our little warning off to 40. Good. And then we're also going to change our altimeter from barometric altitude down to the radar altitude. And if you want to change your barometric pressure, we can see it right here, 29.93. So good. So even if we were using barometric, we'd be good. We also need to set our course line, hugely important. So again, our course line switch is right here. I'm going to change our scale in a moment, but we're going to move our course line so that it's 327. There it is. So you can see it right down here in this spot. So we're 13 nautical miles from our course line, and we've got our course line set for 327. And you can see the course line is set right here. So this is the path that the aircraft carrier is taking. I'm just going to reduce my scale down to about 10. Now, it's important to note that the landing runway is at about a 6-degree offset to the left from what the aircraft carrier heading actually is. And so it's not going to give us an exact heading to our landing. You could set that if you wanted, and when you're doing a Case 3 recovery, they actually give you what the course line is for the actual runway. So we can see the Stennis off here to our 2 o'clock position. We're only 6 nautical miles out, so we're going to go ahead and radio in, let them know that we've seen them, and they're going to switch us to a different air traffic control agent.
010. See you at 10.
Update state, switch tower.
010. State 12.1.
Okay, so we've just updated how much fuel we have on board, and that's really about all that we've done there. I'm just going to come around so that we can get on a nice course line, and again, important here to get down to an altitude and to a speed that we want to have when we're coming in to land. So I'm going to get down to about 1,500 feet before we enter our bank turn to come into our course line. And again, we want to be going about 350 knots. Going from here on in, this is very similar to what you would have practiced in the tutorial that you find in the DCS training modules. Very, very good information there. But once you've got that all set up, then you're going to want to practice, a little bit more freeform on a server or on a mission like the one that I have. So we're just going to descend now down to about 1,000 feet. Make sure we lower our hook. And we want to be going about 350 knots. Now.
Tower 010. Overhead Angels 1. State 12.0.
010. Tower, roger. BRC 327. Signal is Charlie.
Double check our BRC, it's 327.
010.
That was all automatic communication there. When the tower saw us and we saw the tower, we automatically radioed in. Just going to slow down a little bit. And now when we're 1 nautical mile off the bow, and we're going to be at about 800 feet. I'm going to enter into the turn, and I'm going to cut throttles to idle. There we go. And now we're just going to come around. We're going to watch our course line, keeping our velocity vector at the horizon, pulling, close to 3 Gs to come right around. But we're going to watch our course line, and we're going to get, parallel going the opposite direction of the ship. And as we get to 250 knots for our speed, put the landing gear down, flaps to full, and start to roll out and just increase throttles a little bit so the velocity vector doesn't completely crash out. And then again, keeping an eye on our course line, we want to be perfectly perpendicular. Using pitch trim to bring the velocity vector up into the E bracket, and then slowly adding thrust. Keeping it right at the horizon. Now, technically, when you're coming in for a landing, when you're doing the training, they want you to, or they tell you to go when start your turn when you're 5 seconds off the stern of the ship. Now, when you're just learning, you want to give yourself a little bit more of a runway than that, or a little bit more of an approach. So I would recommend, staying a little bit higher because you still need that same glide slope angle. But going out, because we're probably about 5 seconds off right now at the 1.5 nautical mile mark off the stern. But we want to give ourselves a little bit more of a correction time. So I would stay up around the 800 foot range and go anywhere between 2 and 2.5 nautical miles out from the ship. And again, we want to stay as parallel to that course line as we can. And then when we're starting and we're ready to make our turn, we can go ahead and just try and keep the velocity vector on the horizon. So as we turn, we're going to have to increase our thrust a little bit, because the further you turn, you lose speed and you start to descend. And again, you want to be at about that 30-degree angle. Now, we're not going to look at the ship until we're perpendicular to our course line. So you can see the course line in the center of the HUD there. We're coming around. We're perpendicular now. I'm going to look and spot the ship, and then I'm going to start to make my corrections. Now, I want to be, as I start to roll back out, I'm bringing just ever so slightly, bringing the thrust down. I'm going to try and end up a little bit over this way because, again, the landing approach is a little bit off the course line of the ship. Now, I try not to worry too much about the landing safety officer when you're first starting out and practicing. Really, just get a feel for where the runway is and where you want to come in and land. And I'm going to try and get over to the right a little bit more. Bring that velocity vector down a little bit, so that I can get a nice approach into the carrier here. And again, you want to be on that 3-degree glide slope, and you can start to look for the arrestor wires. And I'm still just a tiny bit left, so I'm just going to go straight for a bit. And now you can just start to make out the runway landing area. I'm going to come in just a little bit. Increase my thrust. Keep the bottom of the velocity vector basically on the arresting wire that's closest to us. And then just kind of keep threading it back ever so gently. And then we went ahead and touched down. So hopefully these tips have helped you out. Like I said, my basic tips for practicing your carrier landings is number one, make sure that you're practicing not in the tutorial, because you're going to get a lot more time to actually practice and you're not going to have to worry about those gates. Give yourself a longer approach. So rather than making the turn at, a 5 count past the stern of the ship, wait about 10 or even 12 counts past the stern of the ship. A good rule of thumb is maybe to be about 2.5 nautical miles. That's going to give you a little bit more time to correct and spot your landing pattern. And then as you're coming down, again, you just want to use your stick for your left and right adjustments. Don't do any pitch with the stick forward and back. You should be keeping that velocity vector in the E bracket by using your pitch trim. which once you set it, you can pretty much forget it. And then again, putting the bottom of the E bracket where that first arresting wire should be, and then just come in on your 3-degree glide. So hopefully this has helped you out, and if it has, please give me a like or subscribe or leave a comment, and we will see you in game.